Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So let me start tonight's video off by saying this has been a video that's been a long time coming. I actually wanted to record this video about a month ago as I started seeing, some intriguing developments in this election season in the United States. But one thing led to another, other stories came up. And now I look up and it's the eve of the big election in the United States for, the president of the country. As everybody in the world knows, this election has come down to either the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, or the Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris. But this channel is mostly focused on race, there's definitely a racial content, a racial aspect that I wanted to discuss. And it's been some time because of some comments that I saw some months ago, sometime around the Olympics. And it's an intriguing topic when I contrast and compare how people are seeing this whole thing. And when I bring in the other situation, it makes for an interesting dynamic, which is why I wanted to talk about this. Hopefully I can get this video up for tomorrow, the big day. Is anybody's guess at this point who's going to become the new president, but I wanted to discuss this dynamic right here. So today's video, for some Black Americans, Brazil's champion gymnast Rebeca Andrade is not Black, but Vice President Kamala Harris is. Make this make sense for me. So let's just get into this video because there's a lot to cover. I hope I narrowed it down enough because I could go on and on about some of the contradictions that I see when I analyze this topic. So before I get into this video, definitely like the video, share the video, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking on the notification bell so you know when I put up another video. With that said, I'm going to get directly into the video because I got a lot to cover tonight. So obviously, I think everyone knows on the left, you have Kamala Harris, the current vice president, and the Democratic candidate for president for the 2024 election. And on the right, you have Rebeca Andrade. She became a world champion gymnast, in the 2020, 2021 Olympics. And then she really took the spotlight in the recent Olympics in Paris. Everybody was impressed with the competition she gave to the reigning champion, Simone Biles. So a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about here. Obviously, this brings into the forefront, once again, the racial classification, how it works in Brazil and the United States, the differences and the contrast, the similarities. So it's really just kind of funny how we break down the details here, because for years in the United States, people just looked at somebody as being Black. If you had one drop of Black blood that we could prove that you had African ancestors, you were just Black. In the last couple of decades, we've been moving more towards this mixed identity. If you don't have two Black parents, people will look at you as mixed, but they'll still kind of put you on the Black side. The American census actually does say that. If you have a person who chooses more than one race on the census, they will still be legally recognized as the race of the minority parent. So if you're Black and white, you'll be seen as Black. If you're white and Asian, you'll be seen as Asian, and on and on. Okay, so this came along with the opening up of the choices of racial classification in the United States. Whereas in Brazil, for years, Brazilians went years trying to avoid a Black identity. Now they're moving more towards accepting more people and people accepting themselves as being Black. So it's intriguing to me because the countries are coming together and then going in separate directions in another way. So as I said, Rebeca Andrade is the world-class gymnast who's won several medals over the course of the last two Olympics, as well as world championships in gymnastics rather. Kamala Harris, you all know who she is. California. She's got a lot of history there. It's kind of controversial if you ask me. I was willing to look at this woman and consider what she was bringing to the table, and I had to come to my own conclusion about that. It's simply my opinion. You all have to, make this decision for yourselves, particularly those who are going to be voting tomorrow. So what I came across during the Olympics, and also in the 2023 Global World Gymnastics Championships, I was seeing this idea that some Black Americans didn't see Rebeca Andade as Black. I mean, this is really kind of funny to me because, as I said, I came up in an era where if we could tell you were black, you were just black, right? I don't think there's anything particularly ambiguous about Rebeca Andrade. Again, if we saw Rebeca Andrade walking in the streets in whatever state in the United States is walking around and nobody, and she didn't open her mouth to speak Portuguese, people based what race she was just based on what she looked like. We know that we've seen numerous black girls in our experiences who look like Rebeca Andrade. I mean, you've seen somebody who looks like this woman, but suddenly for Americans, she's not black. I know that has a lot to do with nationality, black nationality, the idea of what actually constitute a black person is more, there's more debate going on about that now. I don't know. Everybody has their own opinion about it. A lot of people still feel, hey, she looks black. She's black to me. Other people are saying, well, does she have two black parents? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then it comes down to, is she American? And that's just, I don't know where this concept of, if black people, if a person who looks black was not born in the United States, suddenly they're not black. I just, again, make that make sense for me. In Brazil, Brazilians recognize Rebeca as being a black girl. People have seen her mother, her father, and her family. We're going to take a look. I'm definitely going to take a look at that. The term in Brazil that people use for black is preto and negro. They tend to look at preto as more of the color black versus negro, which means somebody of the black race. But then there are people who are also rejecting the term negro for the negative connotations and the original meaning of the term. So a lot of people are saying, look, we should define ourselves as pretos, not negros. So there is the same way the United States, the black population has this, we've gone through decades and eras where, okay, we're colored, we're black, we're Negro, we're, Afro-American, African-American. You've seen something similar in Brazil because there's been, just a plethora of terms that people will use to define somebody who was black or of African ancestry, whether it's preto, negro, moreno, mulatto. You have just famously, again, 1976, Brazil had 134 different terms that people use for their color classification. A lot of those terms being used to avoid being labeled as black for their entire lives. To me, this is kind of like, I don't see where people are coming from if they want to reject people outside of the United States of African ancestry, reject them as black. Because to me, wherever we go in the world, you hear stories about black people facing discrimination based on race. So the whole thing of, excluding blackness, or discriminating against blackness, that is a global thing. It's not something that just happens in the United States. That's one of the reasons why I started the Black Brazil Today blog and then the YouTube channel, just to expose, like, look, Black Brazilians are going through the same thing. You can find these stories in Peru. You can go to Argentina, throughout the Americas. And we're not even going to talk about what's going on in the Arab world. Okay. So to me, it's counterproductive to say that people of African ancestry born outside of the United States are not black. If the concept of anti-blackness is global, why would we exclude the vast majority of black people who were born outside of the United States? That makes no sense to me. That's why I say make it make sense for me. If we're only going to claim blackness as something that we have in the Americas or just in the United States, again, that erases the global blackness. So then we have large populations of black people around the world. And then we have historical figures and heroes that were born outside of the United States. I'm saying you're going to just ignore all of that black history and narrow it down to just blackness in the United States. It makes no sense to me. All of the people that we've had come from the African continent, like sports figures that come out of the Caribbean, Latin America, South America, all of those people just aren't black. Musicians, again, make it make sense to me. You're going to narrow blackness down to just the United States. I just can't see how that makes any sense. So then we have the other side coming from the Brazilian side. This is why this is so complex to me. During the 2021 Olympics, white Brazilians wanted to see Rebeca Andrade as just Brazilian. They wanted to erase her blackness. And the black population in Brazil was fighting like, no, she's a black woman. All these years, you've castigated, you've made fun of black Brazilians because they're black. Now a black girl shines the spotlight on the talent of Brazilian athletes, and you want to take this blackness from her and just make her Brazilian. So there's a lot going on here. This is not just me looking at this from the American side or just Brazilian side. I'm just saying when we look at how blackness is seen, how blackness seems to be devalued, pushed to the side or dismissed. And then we have a black girl who came on the scene as a gymnast from very poor origins. And she rises to a level where she's competing head to head with one of the greatest gymnasts in the world in the history of gymnastics, Simone Biles. And suddenly she's not black. She's not. Black Americans are going to reject her because she's not a Black American. But then Brazilians want to reject the figure, the label of her as being a Black Brazilian and just put the term Brazilian on her to erase the significance of a Black girl getting there. This is what I'm saying. To me, it's a loss all the way around by both sides trying to diminish this girl's blackness. I've been following this IG channel for a number of, I don't know, maybe since earlier this year, maybe last year, called Parditude. So it's a term that is like, instead of saying negatude, meaning blackness, this girl has a term that she calls parditude, and she's talking about brownness or mixedness, right? And her argument, and again, I'll keep saying this because I've used a number of her videos and her material, and I say that I don't disagree with everything she says. I think, but there are some key points that we disagree on. This is a Parditude is by a Instagram channel by this girl named Beatriz Bueno, and I just did a story about one of her posts where I says, okay, I agree with some of the stuff that she's saying, but I disagree also. Her main point of contention here. Oh, let me just make my position clear on this. For some years now, I've had to dismiss the idea that all brown Brazilians, Pardos or mixed race or mestizos, that all of these Pardos are actually black, because for the black movement in Brazil, they count all Pardos and pretos as part of the black population. And after having lived in Brazil for almost a decade and visiting for 24 years, I can say there are plenty of people in Brazil who are Pardos, but not necessarily black. There is a significant portion of Pardos who I would consider black, and other people would also, but I can definitely say that all Pardos should not be counted as black. Okay. So Beatriz Bueno's argument about Rebeca, it has to do with her mother and the choice of a black woman in a popular milk brand in Brazil called Parmalat. They used a black woman as Rebeca's mother, where Beatriz Bueno is arguing that Rebeca's mother is actually white. And I disagree with that. I'm going to get into the point as to why I'm saying that as well, to just, again, discuss her points where I agree, where I disagree. And that's why I just said Rebeca's mother isn't white. I mean, I'm going to show you a picture of her. They've never hid her in the media. In Brazil's media, you always saw Rebeca's mother, how she helped to create this champion gymnast. There's never been a situation where they hid her, so people know what she looks like. I have to get into that as we get into the pictures. Again, so Beatriz Bueno's argument is that by placing a black woman in the place of a quote unquote white woman, you're erasing the mixedness of Rebeca Andrade. And I disagree with that because I don't agree that Rebeca's mother is white. To me, the erasure goes on when you try to when you label Rebeca's mother as white instead of mestizo or mixed. So to me, and I've said this before, I said this in my last video, there are millions of Brazilians who call themselves white, and they're actually light-skinned mestizos. They're light-skinned people of mixed race. Rebeca's mother fits into that category. When you look at her, you'll see, no, she has fair skin, but this is not a white woman. So to me, when Bueno makes this argument, I say, no, you're saying that somebody wants to erase the mixed race, the mixedness of Rebeca Andrade's family. But I'm saying, no, I disagree with that, because in fact, by you trying to claim that Rebeca's mother is white, you're erasing her mixedness on that side. I'm going to get more into that as we see the pictures. You'll see what I'm talking about. The argument goes here, and she said this in an article in Brazil's top newspaper, Folha de São Paulo, like, you're trying to make invisible Brazil's mixedness, the mixed families. And I disagree with that also. We all know that when it comes to Brazil's media, it's the black families that are made invisible. Everybody knows that Brazil has a large mixed population, and Brazil has gone out of its way to whiten its black population, both in depicting historically black figures as white, and also like in your novellas and soap operas. I've talked about this. The vast majority of couples you're going to see in a Brazilian soap opera are going to be mixed race couples. So how does she argue that they're trying to make the mixed race family invisible when it's actually the black family that they're trying to make invisible? How many times have you looked on people who watch novellas? Percentages. How often do you see a mixed race couple on the television versus a straight black couple? How do we argue that they're trying to make mixedness disappear or make that invisible when in fact it's rarely do you see a black family in Brazil's media? That's what I'm saying. Then we have to talk about Kamala Harris, or Kamala, however you want to call her name. Black American women strongly support Kamala Harris because she's a quote unquote black woman. But is she really? This is a question that's people have tossed around. And, you know, popular conservative figure, a black woman, Candace Owens, did some incredible research in pulling up Kamala Harris's ancestry. And I have to ask, is she really black? Really? But my other question in terms of the election is, besides her being a quote unquote black woman, what else is there to vote for in Kamala Harris? I've said this and other people have, you know, expressed the same opinion. This has nothing to do with her being a woman. In reality, it doesn't really have nothing to do with what her ethnicity is. What I'm saying is, in all of the years that I followed politics, Kamala Harris has got to be one of the worst political candidates I've ever seen. There's nothing about her that impresses me. I mean, I've seen too many presentations she's made, interviews that she's done. Can't answer a solid question. It seems like she can't have a sentence, can't make a strong sentence when a question is asked, right? Constantly repeating the same answers that even when a question is brought up, instead of answering the questions from how she's going to govern the country, she always goes back to just, let's talk about the negativity of Donald Trump. And I'm like, you can't be serious. What I believe is that people are more voting against Donald Trump rather than for Kamala Harris, because I just honestly don't see nothing there. That's just me. I can't speak for everybody. I'm just saying I have watched presentation and interviews with Kamala Harris, and I just don't see it. She's one of the worst candidates I've ever seen run for president in the United States. That's just my opinion. It reminds me much of the Obama deception in 2007, 2008. Black Americans were excited about this guy, but I look back now, after Obama's presidency ended, I look like, who is this guy? How did he come on the scene and all of a sudden become a president of the United States? I think there's a lot more that we don't know about Barack Obama than what we think we know. I'm going to just leave that at that. I'm saying they did it with Obama, who came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden we got Kamala Harris. I don't understand, because when Kamala Harris ran for president before, nobody supported her. She pops up on the scene now, being the vice presidential candidate, and I just honestly don't get it. If she would have been put up against some of the top Democrats in the country, there's no way Kamala Harris would have gotten the nomination as a Democratic candidate. I mean, convince me that I'm wrong on that. My other question, why did people bring so much heat for Rachel Dolezal presenting herself as a black woman when she was not, but they're not bringing the same heat for Kamala Harris? If you watch any of the series by Candace Owens, you really do have to ask yourself, is this woman black or is this woman Indian? In the end, that shouldn't play a role into why you would choose to vote for her or not. That should have nothing to do with it. But the fact that if it's true what Candace Owens has pointed out, and she's gone this far to try to convince people that she's black and she's not, that is offensive to me. Okay, that's just how I see it. Candace Owens' series exposed Harris's family. It puts serious doubts on blackness, her blackness, I'm saying. People are arguing she's black because she went to a HBCU, as if non-black people don't go to HBCUs. That's what your argument is for Kamala Harris being black, is because she went to a HBCU, when you have Asian people going there, Latino people going there, white people going there. Going to an HBCU does not automatically mean that you're black, just like people are arguing that she has ancestors in Jamaica. Even though Jamaica is a majority black country, there are other races, ethnic groups in the country that are not black. So when we say that Kamala Harris's father is Jamaican, that is not a race, that is a nationality. And I've looked at that guy up and down. I'm not convinced that guy is black. Okay. So this also brings me to the point of the danger in adherence to only Black identity politics. And what I mean by that is, if we put all our support behind somebody just because they're Black, and then there's somebody who is against our interests, we just fell for a trap. Okay. Uh, just because somebody looks Black does not mean that they're on your team. Blackness is not just, some monolithic term. You've got Black people who like all types of different things, people who lean one way or the other in politics. We can't just jump on the bandwagon as somebody as Black, so we have to support them. Now it's just like, okay, you got to be Black and on the left in order for somebody to support. But as I've said, over the last 4 to 6 years, my own political views have had to change, because why should I be stuck on one side of the fence if I don't agree with everything? On both sides, I'm going to have things that I agree with and things I disagree with. So we cannot just narrow down Blackness to just one type of, stereotypical image. Okay. Now let's get into why I'm decided to make this video. Okay. Ali Santos, he's a pretty well-known figure in Brazil in terms of, Afro-Brazilians. He does a lot on Afrofuturism. He does a lot on race. And he brought this question up on one of the most popular Black Brazilian websites, Mundo Negro. And he also tweeted about this when he saw this whole discussion about some Black Americans not seeing Rebeca Andrade as Black. And what he said in this post right here, he says, but why are there American idiots saying that Rebeca isn't Black? This is more common here than you might think. In the press, in academic descriptions, and literature, they rarely use the term Black for us. I warned you about this last week on my podcast, so listen up. So what he's noticing is that in America's press, when it's Black people from another country or in Latin America, they will not use the term Black. I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more. He showed several examples of that, and it's probably true. I know I have seen that when I've looked at like Latina magazine, for example. But let's get into what he says. So this is the post that he made on Mundo Negro. I think it was either during or a little bit after the Olympics when this discussion of Rebeca's not Black came up. So he says, social networks have become a showcase for the racial confusion that surrounds part of the Black community in the United States. And it has become quite common, especially for us Brazilians, to find questions about our Blackness coming from that country. The most emblematic case was the 2023 Artistic Gymnastics World Championships, when several Americans questioned the press's reporting of Rebeca Andrade as Black. Even in 2024, with the historic podium formed by Rebeca Andrade, Simone Biles, and Jordan Childs, we still found some noise in English on the networks. Where does this mismatch of Black identity come from? The answer to this is easier than you might think, but let's go in parts. Okay, so we remember this pose right here. I think there was a controversy about Jordan Childs' medal. I think she got stripped, but for a while, people were celebrating 3 Black girls on the podium. And when that came up, my question was, how are people dismissing Rebeca Andrade as Black, but then when Jordan Childs, I believe her mother is Hispanic of some sort. I don't know if her mother's Puerto Rican or Dominican. I can't remember. But I'm like, okay, by that same ideology, you would classify Jordan Childs as mixed and not Black. So then why are we dismissing Rebeca Andrade's Blackness, but we're not doing the same with we're not doing the same with Jordan Childs? Make it make sense. Let me see. Perhaps you've watched a lot of films subtitled or dubbed about the history of Black civil struggles in the United States. And because the voice actors or translators also often use the word negro or Negro instead of Black, you didn't realize that these are two differently constructed terms. I've already written here about the historical construction of the term Negro in Brazil, or Negro as they pronounce it, born out of the political discussions of our country's movements over the decades. The same happened in the US, but with the word Black, which replaced the others, colored and Negro, after the 1960s. So what he's saying here is, and I've talked a lot about this, the transition that Black Americans made from Negro to Black is a transition that Black Brazilians have made from, say, a mix of different terms, whether they are pardos or mulattoes or pretos, they moved into the category of negro, which is somewhat equal in terms of political identity. If a person is said to be politically conscious in terms of race, they'll accept the term negro in Brazil in the same way that Black Americans switch from Negro to Black in the United States. Okay. So there has been a transition in terms of how people see themselves in both countries. One of the ingredients that was always present for some Black communities in the US was a complex kind of nationalism that helped define the term because the efforts of many were focused exclusively on their community. The president of the African American Intellectual Historical Society and professor of history at Claflin University wrote, Black identity is the most political social identity used to identify people of African descent in the United States. The 1960s constitute a pivotal movement or pivotal moment that recreated what it meant to be Black in the United States, tying together pre-1960s derogatory perceptions of Blackness as an adjective and the post-1960s use of Black to denote people, pride, and power. Black activists in the 1960s and 70s redefined and recreated what it meant to be Black in the United States. I will point out that a similar transition has been made in Brazil, where a lot of Black activists, because of the negative connotation associated with saying negro or preto, a lot of people would define Black Brazilians as either morenos or mulattoes or mestizos or pardos or whatever. And there's been just numerous cases over the last few decades in particular where people are like, no, you can call her or him Black. You can call them negra or negro. There's not a problem with that term. We accept this term. So this same transition has been going on in Brazil for some time now. Continuing, I think this is due to the fact that Americans see themselves as the center of the whole world, so it's common for some definitions to emphasize their country's internal community. This creates this feeling that they are an ethnic group of their own for the more uninformed people on the internet. The U.S. has also been fed Black nationalist ideologies that reinforce this understanding. Black Americans generally perceive two forms of patriotism, a conventional version steeped in whiteness and a personal brand that recognizes racial struggles. The conventional view of Americans considers whites to be the true Americans and excludes the contribution of Blacks. The other view, born of the Black community, is a contrast to this. Many Blacks in the U.S. see their community as a nation within a nation with distinct experiences and perspectives at odds with society at large. This is something that I've experienced myself. I remember when I first started going to Brazil, that one of the first Black families that I met in Brazil, they had trouble understanding that I was American. It was Africano. They thought I was African because in their perception, America is white. So I totally agree with, a lot of what he said in that point, because globally, maybe it's changed because of our international sports and entertainment stars. But for a long time, people looked at the United States as a white country. Okay. The idea of being a nation of one's own is also reflected in relationship with Black immigrant communities of other nationalities. It is therefore common to find different terms for Black Brazilians, Colombians, and so on in the world press. We are occasionally described as Afro-Latinos, Afro-Brazilians, and there are still Americans who insist on not using the term Black for a global community of African descendants, which is what this whole point is about. You can look at clearly Black people that come from Latin America and say that they're not Black because they're not from the United States. I find that really odd. Coming back, what all this tells us is that the most direct answer I could give to the initial question, where does this mess come from, is colonial slavery. It destroyed the connection between African peoples and many of their descendants and created inconsistent names for everyone. Negro or Negro, Black or Afro-Latino are human inventions, social markers, and not genetic or blood markers. That's why Black people around the world are trying to re-signify and build something for themselves with these ideas. And it's only natural that the historical understanding of the terms is modified by time and social awareness. Today, it is common to find more universal currents of the Black identity in the United States. Professor Celeste Watkins Hayes, professor of African American Studies at Northwestern University, says, Black is often a better standard that recognizes and celebrates the race, culture, and lived experiences of people all over the world. The movement you see now towards Black is really recognizing the global nature of Blackness. We will still have many discussions on the subject because, unfortunately, at the same time, movements are growing that still try to centralize the discussion in that country and differentiate themselves from other Black communities. I told you more about these experiences and how Brazilians face them in the U.S. in this episode of my podcast. Okay, so all of that's from Ali Santos, some great points that he made there. So when he discussed this online, he used, to introduce the topic, he used this post that he found on Twitter, and then he translated it for Brazilians to read it. And it says, from this guy, Hustle Mace, says the term Black only describes the American Negro ethnic group in America. That's how. Because he's asking, people are asking, how are you saying that Rebeca Andrade is not black? So he's saying this term is only for Black Americans or Negro ethnic group in America. That's how. And talking about Rebeca, he says she is Brazilian from Brazil. Again, so she's Brazilian, so she can't be black. And this guy's his ideal. White immigrants in America created the term black as a race, just like white, to keep people with similar skin tones grouped together. Okay, but I would argue that in the Spanish and Portuguese Americas, whether we're talking about, most of South America is, according to countries, most of the countries in South America and in the Caribbean, a lot of them are Spanish speaking. Brazil is the only Portuguese speaking country, but all of those countries applied the term negro to the black population. And I would argue that black or enslaved Africans were sent to parts of Latin America before they ended up in the United States. So who has the right to use the term black or negro first? The Portuguese also racialized people, as did the Spanish. So to me, that argument comes up a little bit short, but let's keep it moving. You have a post here, Sha'Carri, 2 gold medals. I don't think that's actually Sha'Carri Richardson. I think there's somebody using her name, Sha'Carri, 2 gold medals. And this person says, okay, in response, let's say the 2013 Antwerp had the first ever black all-around champion in world championships history. In 2023 Antwerp, the 3 leading qualifiers in all-around finals are black, and this could be the very first ever sweep by black gymnasts in the all-around finals. This profile says Rebeca is Afro-Latina, not black. Only Black Americans can be black. It's only 2 black gymnasts on the podium. So this is where this is coming from. If you go on, places like Twitter, you'll find a lot of comments like this. So then somebody else chimes in. I just want to read some of these. Just listen. This is a debate that was going on. This is from October 2023. This profile says, no one is denying nor belittling that woman or her achievement. We are just saying she isn't black. The only black people are Black Americans. She is Afro-Brazilian. Okay. That's what people believe. I can't say how many people have this ideology, but it does exist. Somebody else comments. Americans saying Rebeca isn't black enough for them because she's Latina, and then they say we are trying to hide our black people, like, I don't know, BFR, whatever that means. Pick a narrative. So this person gets it. Like, really? Okay, what happens if people around the world started identifying Black Americans as Anglos because we're in an Anglo, English-speaking country? This person sees it's strange. Just like, wait, I know people aren't trying to say my girl Rebeca isn't black. Yeah, actually they are. Next comment says, I've seen Americans saying Rebeca isn't black, she's Brazilian. Brazilians can't be white. To me, a white Brazilian. Brazilians aren't Latin Americans. Only Americans can be black. Black Europeans are African Americans. And on and on. I mean, every one of those things I could address right now, but I'm not, because there's so much, there's so many other comments I have to feature here. Another profile says it's only dumb African Americans who think they have the monopoly on the word black. They'll say someone like Rebeca isn't black because she's Brazilian, but will turn around and claim someone like Ice Spice is black. Just a very dumb bunch. Okay. Right. Okay. So the debate is going on. This person says, not only does Brazil have one of the largest black populations in the world, but how in the hell do you look at this woman and say she's not black? Again, talking about Rebeca. Next post says, Americans showing why the world mocks them for their ignorance have the nerve to say Rebeca isn't black. Listen here, America. We know you think you're the originator of it all, but the U.S. brought 300,000, slaves, and Brazil bought 5.5 million. So sit the F down. That's the point that I've made for years. Brazil brought anywhere from 10 to 12 to 15 times more enslaved Africans to Brazil than the British brought to the United States. Who has the right to blackness, right? Who has the right to deny that somebody's black? More African people went to Brazil, far more went to Brazil than the United States. Make this make sense for me. Next post, why are people claiming that nobody in Brazil identifies as black? Claiming Rebeca isn't black when she herself has identified as such. Nothing else need to be said there. That's what my whole channel is about. I'm like, okay, black Brazilians are claiming their blackness. Okay. How do you take that away from a girl? It's not that you can even look at Rebeca and say that she's, I'll say that, most black people in the Americas are of whatever degree of mixture. And we see that in Rebeca, but when you look at her, like I said, that's a black girl. I don't see where this is all coming from. So now I want to get into what the Parditude channel, IG channel profile by Beatriz Bueno, what she's talking about. She posted this during the Olympics. There was a television commercial that came out that's supposed to be portraying a young Rebeca Andrade when she was training as a little girl. They had a black girl portraying Rebeca and then a black woman portraying her mother, which is what they took issue with. The Parmalat commercial with a black Rebecca's black mother causes controversy on the networks. It says Donna Hosa, meaning Miss Hosa, which is this woman here, Rebecca's mother, she's white. They only used her voice in the commercial, but they used a black woman. Basically, they were, people had a problem with that. Why did you use a black woman in the place of a white woman? But what I'm going to argue is that Rebecca's mother is not white. I'm going to just show you a couple of pictures and you come to your own conclusion. But let's talk about what the Parditude channel by Beatriz Bueno had to say. In this caption, she says, "This is Rebecca's mother, a white woman." Okay. Please stop trying to, delete our experiences and our multiracial experiences and histories and stories. So she's saying by substituting a clearly black woman in the commercial as Rebecca's mother, they're erasing her mother and the mixedness. This is what her argument is, parditude, brownness, respect that. And I do respect that. But I think she's contradicting herself when she wants to say that we're trying to erase the mixedness of Rebecca's family while ignoring the fact that she's labeling Rebecca's mother as white when she's clearly a mestizo woman. She's mixed as well. Make it make sense. Rebeca is the daughter of Donna Hosa, a woman who worked as a maid and raised 7 children on her own. Her father, who was the black person in an interracial relationship, was not present in Rebecca's upbringing. Again, this is Rebecca's mother. She's fair, but this woman is not white. You tell me, people are free to share their opinions. I'm just saying that woman, to me, she is not white. I'm going to show you another picture of her. This story reflects the reality of thousands of multiracial Brazilian families with their unique beauties and stories of overcoming. Donna Rosa deserved not only to be played by an actress who looked like her physically, but to appear in the commercial herself. So who's this guy? This is Rebeca Andrade's father. Is there any dispute what this man is? Okay, they did a few interviews with him, but as it said, as it has been confirmed, he did not participate in the upbringing of Rebeca and her siblings. But this is what her father looks like. Okay. So Beatrice continues. Why create a fictional narrative in an advertisement when there is a unique opportunity to represent several real Brazilian families and stories? Why are we denying and distancing ourselves so much from the true story of our country? Why choose to tell lies and who gains from this? As I said, I disagree with that. I think mesticizing or mixedness is on the front page of anything that has to do with Brazil. You rarely see black families in Brazil's media. It's just a fact. I like to see somebody dispute that. Anybody who's watched enough Brazilian media, you will notice that there's either white families or mixed families. Rarely do you see a family that has black father, black mother, and black kids. So what is she talking about here? Let's go a little bit further. So we want to take away Rebecca's mixedness, all right? Brazilians' mixedness. Like, no, Rebeca is a black woman. Her mother is a light-skinned mixed woman, but Rebeca is clearly a black girl. And if you don't think that's true, let's take a look at her family. Who are all of these ninjas? I mean, I saw this picture of her family. I'm like, man, what are you guys talking about? I mean, do you see anybody here who's not black? That's just me. I mean, by color, some of them could be considered Pardus if you like, but again, we get into this color classification to say that no Pardu is black. I have a problem with that. It could be just a skin color. There are people who are Pardus who are not black, but there are also Pardus who are black. Let me keep this moving. I'm continuing with Beatrice. Including Rebecca's real mother in the commercial would in no way diminish the impact of her story as a beautiful inspiration for black girls. Okay, so she is noting that because of Rebeca looks like, there are other girls who look like her who can look to her like, damn, if Rebeca can do this, I as a black girl can also. On the contrary, it would create even more of a genuine connection with our real families, mixed race family like Rebecca's, like mine, and many of yours. Again, Rebecca's mother. This is Rebeca Andrade. This is her mother. I'm sorry, she does not strike me as a white woman. I mean, I can even go as far as to say, okay, this is a mixed woman. She's a mestiza, but white, I don't see it. What do you guys think? That's, I don't know. I think it's pretty obvious to me. She says, congratulations, Rebeca and Rosa, for representing Brazil. Let's move into the Kamala Harris discussion. Is Kamala Harris really black? It's a question to ask. I hope people genuinely are not voting for Kamala Harris just because she's black. But realistically, I know that this is true. Are black people voting for Kamala because she's black? Yes. Let's see, what else do we have here? Black woman admits that, I'm not going to go through all of these videos because I'm saying it would take a while. But obviously, this is a point. Like, I think it was obvious with Obama back in 2008 and 2012. People supported him because he was black. Okay, he came across as intelligent and as a formidable candidate as well, but a lot of black people identified with him being black. And I just have to point out, I'm not going to get into Obama's history, but if you look into his history, you find out some things that perhaps the media didn't tell you. Anyway, Antoine Daniels schools black women on voting for Kamala Harris because she's black. Vote for Kamala because she's black, says dumb rapper. Is Kamala Harris blackfishing? Rapper Slim Thug says he's voting for Kamala just because she's black, and on it goes. I would not vote for somebody just because of what they are. I mean, like I said, does Kamala Harris know what my life is about? When you look into Kamala Harris's history, what you find is that she's a descendant of a slave-owning family. So what does she identify with? How does Kamala Harris identify with who I am, for example? I don't see nothing about Kamala Harris that would make me vote for her, honestly. I mean, I see more in George W. Bush than Kamala Harris. If you want to talk about a formidable presidential candidate, people talked about how stupid George W. Bush was, but Kamala Harris, let me keep it moving. As I said, Candace Owens did a full expose on this. Anybody who's voting for Kamala Harris because she's black, I would urge you to watch that series that she did. It was incredible. Candace Owens did some incredible research on this, saying, Kamala Harris went as far as to claim that this black woman was her grandmother, and we're finding out, like, no, she was more likely one of the people that worked for Kamala Harris's family. I'm going to say it again. If that's all true, I'm actually offended that Kamala Harris would go this far to try to present herself as a black woman in some type of way. I want to remind people that when you start dealing with people from India, there are numerous types of phenotypes in India because, different strands of different types of people are in India, right? Some of those, I've seen black women. I've seen Indian women from India who actually look black. And I'm not going to say that Kamala Harris actually does look black to me. I just know that she's not. If you think she's black, you really do. The burden of evidence should be on the person who says that she is black, because 4 and 8 years ago, nobody was calling Kamala Harris black. Anyway, Candace said it right. She had some explaining to do when she dug into the history, and I find it intriguing that the media completely ignored this long series that Candace Owens did with some incredible research. How can you ignore this? How the F did you find this? Look at this woman, and then look at Kamala Harris. This is a white woman. This is probably Kamala Harris's grandmother, and the face is the exact same. You can't make this up. Again, she made it all up. Candace's argument looks it's a very strong argument. Joe Brown, I met her daddy. This is the guy that's supposed to be Kamala Harris's father. Is it really her father? I looked this guy up and down, and I'm like, okay, I can see how somebody would think that he's black, but it doesn't mean that he is. There's been times when I've been out in public, at a shopping mall or wherever I might be, and I've seen Indian people whose facial features actually look like black people. The only reason I'll know that they're not black, according to Black American standards, is because of the texture of their hair. But some of them will have faces where you swear you're looking at a black person, but they're in fact Indians. That's kind of the way I see her father. Okay. Of course, we're all familiar with this picture right here. It's been shown in the media numerous times. This girl right here, whoever this is in her family, this girl looks black too, but she's Indian, this is a point that I'm making. Okay, this Twitter profile, check out what she said. She didn't mention that Kamala has lied about being black, though. It can now be confirmed she stole and lied about an entire culture being hers. She culturally appropriated this woman's photo and claimed she was someone that died in 1960, 4 years prior to her birth. So how could this be? Oh, we found out. She has no black ancestors, just that her ancestors owned thousands of slaves on a sugarcane plantation. I would be outraged if I were her. This poor woman was used for what? Votes. Is indicative of sociopathic behavior to lie to a black young man's face and say, I was raised as a black woman, stealing his history for votes to get rich. What she's talking about is, and it is disgusting. If Kamala Harris really did that, it's just shameful. All of this to get elected, if it's absolutely true, and it seems like it is, that this is not Kamala Harris's grandmother. It's probably a woman who worked for the Harris family, maybe on a plantation or something, maybe in the Harris home in Jamaica. This is what I'm saying. If Kamala Harris is black, and at this point it doesn't matter, I wouldn't vote for her anyway. If she's black, prove it, because Candace Owens has presented some very formidable evidence that suggests the opposite. Like, this is not a black woman. Okay. Anyway, that's about what I have today. I could go on and on, but I think I've presented my case here on how the dynamics are working. When I just want to understand, Black Americans are dismissing Rebeca Andrade. I'm not saying all. I think it's a small parcel of Black Americans who say she's not black, but it exists. Okay. But I just want to understand the logic there, how you can say Rebeca Andrade is not black, seeing what she looks like, seeing her father, seeing her mother. But then on the other hand, we don't see any black heritage from Kamala Harris, but you want to argue that she is black. I don't get it. I mean, people want to invest that much emotional attachment to Kamala Harris. And if it turns out she's not black, I'm just curious about how people are going to react to that. So anyway, I'm going to end this video here. There's so much more that I could talk about, but the video will be extra long. So I'm going to just leave it here. Just want to know what you guys are thinking right now. Does it sound like a contradiction that you can claim Kamala Harris as black, but you say Rebeca Andrade is not? Let's get the conversation started. Drop a comment in the comment section. Like this video, share this video. Consider subscribing to the channel. Click on the notification bell so you know when I put up another video. With that said, I'm going to end the video here. Request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post here at Black Brazil Today.